I would like to introduce our last speaker, Runar Asly, Academy Manager of Access Communications. Now, let's welcome and deliver his speech.
Thank you. Before I get started, I just want a quick show of hands so I know how to position the speech. So I would like to know how many here represents a system integrator or a distributor or someone in the sales division. Okay. And how many of you guys represents an end customer looking for buying a security or a system? Okay. Good. Thank you. The initial topic of my speak was why IP. And as I would tell you a little bit later, I thought it was too basic for the Taiwanese public. So we're going to change the topic a little bit and talk about the advantage IP and see how education can be used as a force enabler in the convergence from analog to IP video. This is not a new Axis camera. This is the first network video camera ever produced. It's the Axis Net-I 200. The camera was produced in 1996 by Axis Communications in Lund in Sweden. And ever since then, IP has improved. Like you can see on the lens and on the general design of this product, it was probably not the best image quality you can ever imagine, but it was the first. Since then, a lot of stuff have happened. And most recently, Axis has introduced HD TV network video with the camera Q1755. This camera is a megapixel camera which delivers HD TV quality. That means it guarantees 30 or 25 frames per second for NTSC PAL resolution. I'm showing you this not basically to brag about Axis new cameras, but rather to show you what Axis stands for and what the IP industry stands for. We stand for innovation and development. So while the first network video cameras were far behind analog competitors as far as image quality is concerned, these new cameras are way, way, way ahead. Looking at image size. If you look at a traditional analog camera, you have the resolution measured in CIF. And this is 1 CIF resolution. And as you can see on the number on the screen, 352 by 240, that's the resolution equivalent in pixels. The more common resolution nowadays on analog cameras is 4 CIF. So that gives you an image which is 704 pixels wide. The new Q1755 from Axis gives you an image width of 1280 pixels, which is equivalent to the nowadays more common standard megapixel, 1.3 megapixel camera. 2 megapixel will give you 1600 pixels width. And the new Q1755, which I mentioned earlier, gives you a pixel width of 1920 pixels times 1080, which is in compliance with the SM standard for HD TV. So what does that mean? Well, if you compare it to an analog 4 CIF camera, this HD TV camera gives you an image size 6 times the size. And in 6 times the size, you're going to learn during this presentation that you can do a lot of fun stuff with it. Image size is not always good because, as people who's been criticizing network video for previously said, megapixel camera will only make sure that you have to pay a lot to store the video. Well, last year, Axis was the first camera vendor, again first, to launch H.264 in our products. As the market leader, we took responsibility and started designing and developing cameras with H.264. Some of our competitors have actually managed to launch new products on H.264, and some of them have only announced that they will, but this is the market trend. And if you compare to the old standard Motion JPEG, H.264 gives you a compression of about 80% more, which is really good. And now we can start using megapixel cameras. Okay. This graph will show you the Asian IP market. Or it actually coincides quite a lot with the global IP market. Where 1996, that's where we launched our first camera, as I told you. And in the beginning, it was all about awareness. All vendors were talking about advantages of IP. Why should you use IP? We were talking and selling, really trying to convince people that IP was the new way. Now, 2009, 2008, I think there's a convergence point. People are trying to buy into the entire concept of IP. Some of the things stopping IP, talking to analog's favor, has been changed due to stuff like megapixel and also like H.264. So what we're focusing on right now is the adaptation. How do you go from knowing something to wanting to use it? So this is a shift in the maturity. People previously only willing to work with analog are now looking towards IP and said, okay, I'm sold. I want to get into this. How do I do it? And that's where Axis take an important role, and we take responsibility by training our partners. Like I mentioned earlier, Axis is a Swedish company, and we work in close cooperation with the University of Lund in Sweden. That's where we have our headquarters.